I think the first thing that I initially saw, that I saw a woman who was very authentic, very strong, but also going through something and not afraid to show it and take up space in her feelings, not apologetic about it. And that really moved me, especially for this being a period piece. And I just love that it was so well written and the character was so full and her flaws as well as strengths were shown very evidently.
And with this nuanced kind of writing, is this, something that's really important to you, like in terms of representation?
Oh, of course. I think at the end of the day, you just want good writing and you want full characters with an arc, and I always think that when I'm doing my job the best is when how I look doesn't matter. And then at the end of the day, we're just telling the story about a woman and her journey. And so, what I loved in this in particular, even though it is during a time frame where racial tension was quite fraught, what is quite beautiful is that she's just a woman at the end of the day, and they don't choose to apply stereotypes or capitalize on, how she looks.
I loved the idea of and the theme of found family, where all these characters connected, like you say. Did you have experiences in your own life that kind of influenced how you played the character?
I'm sure. I think she's very relatable. I think, and I had hoped to try to draw out this sense of maternity that she exudes that people could connect to. Whether it is your mother or grandmother or aunt or godmother, this female figure in your life who, has been through a lot, endures a lot, continues to adore a lot, makes many sacrifices, and yet, in the midst of their struggle, they still push on and persevere. So I've definitely had many people in my personal family who has been that a light for me and that support for me. And so I think in many ways I wanted to pay homage not only to my family but to other women, so that when people see it, they can have that deep, visceral connection of that special person in their life.
That's so lovely. And the film is really character driven. And did you develop a close friendship with Paul and Dominic? Because I really love the chemistry that you guys have.
Yeah, for sure. We had never met before. I think I was one of the last people to come onto the project. However, sometimes you get really lucky where not only does casting do a really good job, but also where you just have not only these other two actors, but the full cast and crew is fully on board and fully committed in telling the story. It's not just a job for them. Everyone in their own department of artistry is truly connecting to the piece. So that was a really big help. And then I would say, in regards to them, Dominic, though this is his first time as an old soul and quite grounded and very open to the process and really wanted and had a willingness to learn, which was quite amazing. And then for Paul, we went to the same school, though at different times. And what was magnificent was that there was still, I guess, in many ways, the curriculum was still the same, though there had been quite some time in between. And so, in many ways, it's like we spoke our language together, the same, because there was many things that he innately did or knew or that I could quickly pick up on or recognize. And so it allowed us to set the bar, or the foundation of it was set quite high, so we knew that we could really dig in even further. So I think that is probably what came across. And then also, they're just really nice people at the end of the day, good spirited people, and that, as insignificant as it may seem, is a big deal.
And Mary is grieving her son who died in the Vietnam War. I feel like grief is very tender and restrained. What kind of conversations did you have with Alex about how to portray grief?
Right. So what we talked about is, the many different nuances and complexities of grief. And so what I use kind of as a marker for myself is I made a decision for myself early on that I wanted to go through all the different stages of grief throughout the process of this film from start to finish. And what I found in my research and also in me then portraying the role was that it doesn't always conveniently happen in that order. Like when you Google it, that order that is stated, it doesn't, matter of fact, it usually doesn't happen in that order. However, those things are very true and real, but they happen at many different times, sometimes a combination of two or three at once. It's far more complex, but it was a good grounding point for myself. And then also, I think to seeing all the different shades of it, meaning we knew very quickly we didn't want her to just be, in the corner sobbing the entire movie. That wouldn't have worked. And so we tried to find ways in which there were nuances where you can find humor or irony at best to kind of offset things so that it would be more digestible and intriguing and where the audience would lean in as opposed to, be turned off or be disengaged because it's just constant crying or. So we try to find and strike that balance.
Yeah, I found it really relatable as well, your performance. I was just also wondering, for me personally, I have a complicated family dynamic, and I thought the film really encapsulated how important a found family can be. Did you feel this through too when you first read the script?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful how I always say this is like the imperfect perfect holiday movie, but it's the most, not the most, but to me it's one of the best examples of a perfect imperfect film, but also in human development and relationships in general. Because you're right, I think as we get older and when we break from the ties, even naturally, break from the ties of our family, there's this very unique and interesting transition that happens where we, as young adults, whatever age, start to make and create our own chosen family. And it's a interesting moment because in some people's lives, that chosen family is far more significant or greater than the one given. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay. And as long as you are, taking good care of yourself, prioritizing mental health, and setting healthy boundaries, even if that means, that you aren't as close with your chosen family, if it's something that is a hindrance to you when being with them so intimately, I think it's completely okay. And I hope that this movie encourages people of like, talk things out and make connections. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be with your family. You can find support and love elsewhere. And I think it's a beautiful message that this movie exudes.
Yeah, I found that it took so long for me to learn that getting into adulthood, and watching
Yeah.
this film just, yeah, it just melted my heart. You're an early front runner for an Oscar for this role. How does that feel, and what are your hopes for the future in terms of your career?
It's amazing. I'm very grateful and moved that people are so early on um, identifying my performance as um, I don't know. I get uh, tongue tied, to be really honest, to when discussing it, because it's very humbling. It's very, very humbling. I've been doing this for a little bit, and I've always kind of just kept my head down and did the work and do roles that I obviously connect to and feel committed to. But I've never done it for the accolades. I've done it because I feel as though this is one of my gifts and in alignment with my purpose. But when you have a moment such as this, where the powers that be, your peers, people you look up to, are noting your work, and in particular, noting your work in this specific project, it's very moving, and I'm forever grateful. No matter what happens, I'm just really honored that people are receiving it because for me, all it is for me is an offering. It's my way of giving back to the world. Like I said, it's part of my purpose, and I feel like it's like my mission statement, so to speak, in life. That this is a way of my activism, my service to others, because I think in many ways, not only in being in a movie like this, but even when you're in like a quote unquote silly comedy, I want to do it so that I can affect change in other people, whether it's to give them a release, a laugh, a good cry. It's pathos, it's we're dealing with people's feelings, and I take that very seriously, and delicately. So in regards to my career, I just want to continue to do high quality work, and would love to continue to be considered and a part of projects and in the room with people who hold that same kind of pedigree, discipline, quality, a standard for themselves as I would want for myself. And to me, I've always been told that this industry, you have to see it as a marathon and not a race, not a sprint. And so a lot of that comes down to stamina. And so I think there's a constant conversation one must have, an artist must have with themselves of what is it that I want to do? What is it that makes, makes me tick? How can I best give back? And so for me right now, what I'm realizing and have realized in doing this project is wanting to have quality and continue to play. I mean, it just is what it is by consequence of how I look, but to continue to play characters, females, people of color, in which the standard is high.